If you have been wondering if your baby's eczema can only be helped by topical steroids, or if there might be some root causes that can be found and addressed, I think you're onto something. In this video, I'm going to share the 5 most common root causes of eczema in babies through the lens of a functional medicine practitioner. For everyone who's new to this channel, my name is Julia Martin. I'm a German MD turned functional medicine practitioner specializing in eczema. I myself had eczema for over 30 years of my life, and all the conventional care I learned about didn't help enough to really get it gone long term. So I went back to school, studied functional medicine, learned so much more than I had learned in German med school, and was finally able to address my own eczema and now strive to do the same for others so that they can overcome their eczema too. I have to share a quick legal disclaimer with you. This video, of course, is only meant for educational purposes and not meant to diagnose or treat any kind of disease. Through the functional medicine lens, eczema is not just a skin disorder, but rather an outside sign of inflammation on the inside. So when we're looking for the root causes of eczema, we're really looking for the root causes of this inner inflammation. Let's get started. Here are the 5 most common root causes of eczema in babies. Root cause number 1 is dysbiosis. Dysbiosis just means that there's an imbalance in the gut microbiome. The microbiome includes everything from bacteria over parasites, over viruses, and all the way to yeasts. They all are supposed to live in us, but we need a good balance of all these, good ratios in between those to function properly, to not be inflamed. Now the question has to be, why would our tiny precious babies end up with a dysbiotic gut already? And there are actually several reasons. First, maybe we as moms, while doing all the good things, are not aware that we ourselves have quite some dysbiosis in our gut, right? So even if we have a natural birth, right, we're breastfeeding, we're not doing anything that could interfere with the transfer of the microbiome. If our gut microbiome isn't as perfect as we'd like it to be, we might end up handing forward much too much yeast, or maybe some of the pathogens are able to settle into our baby's gut in higher amounts. Our adult immune system can handle those maybe, our baby's immune system cannot. I say this without wanting to blame any mom for any transfer of bad bacteria, of course. I appreciate that we're all doing the best we can to do this in a great way. I myself handed forward so many bad bacteria to my firstborn. Nobody does this on purpose. Second reason for this can be that we have had a C-section. Our baby has been exposed to lots of hospital germs, for example. Maybe our baby had to stay a few days in the NICU, right? We had to recover from the C-section, might have stayed a little bit longer with our baby. The baby was exposed to many more really resistant and really strong hospital germs. Same thing here. Of course, there's no blame in having a C-section. It can be absolutely life-saving, and we want to appreciate it for that. And then, of course, if we as moms or even our baby had to take antibiotics, which can lead to very changed and imbalanced ratios afterwards, that can lead to dysbiosis. Root cause number 2, nutrient deficiencies. The most common ones are vitamin D, vitamin A, zinc, at least intracellular, magnesium, and sometimes iron. And depending on our baby's age, we can also sometimes see a low status in proteins and healthy fats. Maybe we as moms have suffered from a low nutrient status before pregnancy, maybe during pregnancy, maybe after, that we weren't able to hand forward these nutrients while growing the baby or then while breastfeeding. Second reason can be that our baby's gut inflammation has become so intense already that she actually isn't able to digest the foods that are coming in and therefore pull out those nutrients and then absorb them. By the way, if you have any questions around this content, feel free to put them in the comments. Maybe your question becomes the next video. And of course, if you like this kind of content, please like and subscribe. It helps our channel to grow and show this video to lots more people. On to root cause number 3. Food reactivities. Our immune system is supposed to actually detect any protein that doesn't belong into our body or is part of our own body. So if undigested protein is able to leak through an inflamed gut lining and meets those immune cells, they're very likely to mark them with their little antibodies as a dangerous stranger. In babies, that happens more easily even because we're all born with an immature gut lining. If then on top of that, there's lots of inflammation due to dysbiosis, it happens to a whole different degree, and almost everything leaks through. Our immune system will remember those proteins that have been marked as a dangerous stranger and will create memory cells that produce antibodies over and over again every time it meets those proteins. This can cause the onset of food sensitivities, or even more intense, the onset of food allergies. Root cause number 4, toxin overload. We all are so careful with the products we choose for our babies. Still, when researchers looked at blood of newborn babies, they tested the umbilical cord blood, they found over 200 different really inflammatory, sometimes carcinogenic toxins in there. That's really intense. We're all swimming in this toxic soup without usually even knowing this, right? For example, there's another study that came out in the beginning of this year, 2023, in which researchers found one particular kind of toxins clearly being related to the onset and the severity of eczema in our population. These toxins are called diisocyanates. They are in everything that has to do with foam, usually polyurethane foam, PU foam, you might have heard of. So our babies are exposed to them when they're sleeping on their mattress, when they are sitting in their baby seat, when we put them on the changing table. This foam is everywhere, and we're using it for convenience, but it really might not be the best choice for us to use for our babies. So what does toxin exposure have to do with inflammation? The problem is that when we are dealing with lots of toxins, our liver has to detoxify these 24/7. Now, don't get me wrong, our liver does this really wonderfully the whole time. But if there's an overload, if there's more than our liver can get through, or maybe there, like we already talked about, some nutrient deficiencies of the nutrients that are necessary to actually detoxify these toxins, we might end up with jammed detox pathways that can create lots of inflammatory intermediates that then lead to a whole new inflammatory cascades starting in the body. Secondary, the toxins themselves can directly damage certain tissues in the body and lead to overall more inflammation in the whole system. Root cause number 5, a leaky skin barrier. Just like we were talking about for the gut, it can happen on our skin as well. So if we have dealt with lots of nutrient deficiencies while we were made in our mother's womb, for example, we might not have a very good functioning skin barrier. In general, babies are more prone to let certain proteins come through more easily when they're freshly on this earth. If proteins or their next smaller version, peptides, are leaking through, the same thing happens as in the gut. The immune system might see them and mark them as dangerous strangers. So if we're using certain, maybe more toxin-containing substances, obviously not on purpose, but that can happen within our very convenient modern world, we might end up upsetting our immune cells and creating a sensitivity or an allergy towards those substances in that particular product. Sometimes those toxins can actually lead to more leakiness themselves and then create a vicious cycle because they allow more of themselves to come through. There are also some genetic predispositions. There can be changes in what's called the filaggrin gene that then changes the way of how our skin stays moisturized from the inside out. However, we now know through the science of epigenetics that there are ways through diet and lifestyle how we might be able to switch those genes on that are making up for this, or how to switch these genes off that cause this trouble. Another way for our babies to end up with more leaky skin is that certain topicals, especially certain moisturizers, contain a lot of what's called emulsifiers. Emulsifiers are used to bind the oil in a cream, a lotion, an ointment to water, which usually won't mix. The problem then can be that these emulsifiers, if included in a high amount in these formulations, can end up lifting or binding to our skin's own oils and therefore actually cause to lose some of the moisturizing factors of our own skin. So short term, our skin might look better when using these moisturizers. Long term, we might end up with a dependency on those moisturizers because they actually have disturbed our skin barrier function. Now, this is not true for every moisturizer, but there are lots of them available over the counter and actually also in prescriptive form that contain so many emulsifiers that it's much too much for our skin. And then, of course, which is not a root cause of eczema, but once we have developed eczema, our skin barrier function is more leaky. It's gonna let in more substances. So all the points I was just listing can of course happen even more so once the eczema has developed and cause a secondary vicious cycle. All right, now which of those 5 most common root causes of eczema in babies resonated the most with your baby situation, or maybe your own situation when you were a baby and started to have eczema? Let me know in the comments. I'm excited to read them. Bye for now, until the next video.